Back everyone, as of December 2023, displacement tracking metrics reported a total of 3.3 million internally displaced persons, over 1 million returnees and 209,000 refugees living in more than 3,900 locations across 14 states in Nigeria. This number includes 2.3 IDPs identified in locations covered in the northeast, while the remaining 1 million IDPs were identified in locations assessed in north central and northwest Nigeria. Present in Nigeria, there is no data on IDPs on their solution pathways or in their preferred location of solutions, and that's why we're having this conversation tonight. Joining me this evening is Dr. Jacob Pele, Policy Development Analyst, CEO MD TAF Africa. Dr. Pele, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I just added one more feather to my hat. I had just started a podcast called Hidden Sparks. So
Okay.
you can.
How's that going?
Yeah, you can jolly well add to say the host of Hidden Sparks.
Okay, so how's that going, Dr. Pele?
It was very well. I wanted something different from the regular news, sensationalism and all that. So I'm exploring stories of individuals like you that had come from almost nowhere to where you are today. So I'm looking at what are the hidden sparks in you that had propelled you to where you are.
All right. Interesting.
It's more like the story before the glory.
All right. All right. We'll look out for that. Thank you so much for joining us once again. So Nigeria has a long history of internal displacement. Records show that the 1967 to 1970 internal armed conflict led to the displacement of over 10 million persons at that time. And so I would like for us to begin this conversation with you giving us a picture of what the situation is. How serious is the situation on our hands?
Well, as serious as the situation is, but I think I also want to sound optimistic, knowing fully well that I can jolly well say that we do now have people and institutions that we can trust to begin to bring a lasting solution to issues of IDPs. The current humanitarian minister seems to have his act together. Hopefully, by the time he activates some of the laudable ideas that he has been going around and sharing, we will begin to see concrete intervention measure that we can beat our chest to say, yes, we're on the right track. I think also the commission headed by my very good friend Tijani and his team, which is saddled with the responsibility of making interventions for refugees, IDPs, and migration. They do have a strategy, a workable strategy. And like I said, hopefully, when they start unveiling in details the things that they want to do. For instance, I am aware, because we are all here in Portugal, I am aware that the Commission has started building cities within the locations of some of these camps, for those of them that don't want to go back, and they don't want to go back because they've lost their homes. They don't seem to have anywhere to go to. So there is a plan, going by what I know, to build cities within that location where they will be relocated and given a good livelihood. Those cities will have schools, it will have markets, it will have training centers. It's a full-fledged city that is being built. And I'm consciously and painstakingly going through some of the plans to ensure that we don't have a reclusive city, a city where we just move people that are most vulnerable and then allow them there isolated from the society. So it must be an inclusive city, what they are planning. I think they're about to roll out one in Nasarawa, but the issue of IDP is something that is very concerning. And it's not only Nigeria. We were in the high level European Union and members and partners, very high level meeting, which they call the Rabat process, which is a combination of North, Central, West Africa, and European Union countries coming together to find a lasting solution for issue of migrants. And IDPs are part of the framework of the intervention that Euro-Africa dialogue for intergovernment and NGOs, and so today, I want to also use this opportunity to congratulate Nigeria because Nigeria took over the chairmanship of the Rabat process. Just this evening, the Honorable Minister of Humanitarian became the chair of the process, and so that's a good thing for Nigeria. There are huge economic benefits that comes with that. And so the issue of internally displaced persons will have some some respite at the end of the day. So there's something in the works. I think the president seems to have his eyes
All right, Dr.
on
Pele.
a lasting solution. Yes.
All right, so it's good to hear that you're in talks with both the National Commissioner and the Minister of Humanitarian Crisis, because, Nigerians will say, and I know this is not the first time we're having this conversation, Nigerians will say, what's the purpose of having strategies, putting up policies without accurate data? From what you know, what's the data like? And like I said before, the numbers are staggering. And just like I read out in my intro, as of December 2023, the displacement tracking metrics reported a total of 3 million internally displaced persons. And I guess if we have our figures, then we'd know where to start.
Well, I can tell you for free that, again, I don't speak for humanitarian ministry, but going by what I know, going by my interaction, going by what I have seen, Professor Nentao seems to have a solution to the issue of social register. I've always called for an interrogation of the social register. I've always called for ensuring that we have a social register that is that we can say has integrity, the integrity of both the process and the outcome. I think because of the minister's experience as electronics engineer, electrical and electronics engineer who is also a professor, he's and someone who had been in data strategic implementation and management. He was one-time national commissioner in INEC that was part of the technology, the evolution of technology in INEC. So he seems to have a lasting solution to this by the methodology with which he was going to deploy the final cleanup of this data and establishing the mechanism that will ensure that proper data are collated, analyzed, and set up a continuous process where the data, every every intervention generates data is generated and properly managed, analyzed, and utilized. So I want to believe, going by what I've heard and the antecedents of this minister, that we will find a lasting solution because, Jumoke, truth remains that our problem has always been data that we cannot trust, data that is not credible, data that has not been properly interrogated, and finally, which is a major problem, data that is usable, because oftentimes we have data, but those data are useless.
So, Dr. Pella, in a minute, we'll talk about what the chairmanship of the RABA process would mean for Nigeria and what must do to stand out. But you've been in this business for a while. What would you consider as the missing link to successive governments or administrations taking bold steps to reducing the number of Nigerians in the IDP camps across the country?
Well, I think most times that, for instance, Nigeria has been talking about migration and the intersection between that and an IDP. We've not been we've had very old, worn-out policy that has just been reviewed. And I can also tell you here that part of the reason why I'm very happy with both IOM and the network of migrants, which I belong, founded and run adequately well by Reverend Father Emeka, Dr. Emeka. I think because there is a policy that we can trust now, and there are proper program, bankable or fundable program, we will be able to attract funding from the international community, both locally and internationally. Apart from the general bigger meeting we had here in Portugal, there were other side meetings, and those side, or what they call fireside meetings, those fireside meetings were intentionally created to discuss with minded funding partners who are interested in bringing the much needed intervention in very many areas. And top on the list of both the minister and all the agencies were the issue of IDP. For instance, Honorable Aduke Dabre was here, and she's still here. We just finished that meeting this evening. Tijani, who runs the Federal Commission for Migration and IDP. In fact, every issues of IDP saddled is on his table. All these agencies were here in person, and I saw many of them reaching out to these development partners and all that. And it's not just to get their money, it's also to learn from them and to ensure that we have a very strong institutions to run some of these projects. I'll tell you one thing. To my greatest surprise, I discovered that Nigeria is way ahead of most African countries. As a matter of fact, they take, for instance, the issue of migrants, irregular migration. Nigeria is not even, didn't even meet the, they were not in the list of the 20 most, 20 countries that are really heavily involved in illegal migration. Nigeria didn't make that list. And so we are doing well in that area. We have strong institutions that are working. And yes, anyone listening to me will say there's a whole lot more to be
All right,
done.
Dr. Pele, I hear you, and it's so good to hear this positive review. But you know, with the kind of conversations you and I have had on this platform, we know that Nigeria, when it comes to policy documents, we're good with that. But implementation of this policy is our major challenge. So if you take a critical look at the old policy document and the reviewed one, what has changed?
Well, I can tell you, Jumoke, I think it's pertinent for me to disabuse the minds of many people who fight this issue of who says that, oh, there are too many policies, no implementation. And my question is, would you rather have, or how would you even talk about implementation without policy? So you must have policy before you start fighting for the implementation. And time will fail me, Jumoke. I can tell you why. And I did present a paper in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, years back, when I was talking about why policies are not oftentimes not implemented in Africa. You know, I put the blame squarely on the policy initiators.
Okay.
Policies are not, they don't have legs, they don't have hands, they don't have eyes. Policies are ideologies encapsulated in a paper document. Of most times, policies are government documents. But if you formulate a policy, and as a policy expert, if you formulate a policy and you don't have the work frame to follow through that policy to implementation, you have no business starting that policy in the first place. When I started the inclusive education policy, people laughed at me and said, oh, it's not going to work. Today, the inclusive education policy is in the budget of Federal Ministry of Education. The president has instructed, and there is a committee, an interministerial committee by the Federal Ministry of Education on inclusive education, and I'm the co-chair, of that committee. So for someone to say, oh well, there are too many policies, very little implementation, please let there be many policies so that there will be policymakers who will take the responsibility of pushing to see that their policies are implemented. It is not squarely the responsibility of government to drive implementation of policy. It's actually the civil society, and someone may disagree with me here, but the civil society have a role to play in holding government accountable to implement a policy. And that's what has happened in our own case.
Perhaps it's about the political will then. I ask these questions because I remember 10 years ago, a presidential committee headed by T.Y. Danjuma was set up for the resettlement, reintegration of IDPs and the reconstruction of the northeastern region of the country. Billions of naira was raised in the national luncheon. And apart from this, we've had different committees set up by respective state governments in the northeast region and contributions and support by international organizations. Talk about UNHCR, UK DFIDP and USAID, among other donor organizations. However, a number of questions are persistently and recurrently being asked on the effective management of IDPs in the northeastern region. And in particular, Dr. Pele, questions bordering on humanitarian treatment, abuse of human rights, poor health status, hunger, diversion and outright stealing of humanitarian aids of IDPs are unending. So I'm sure you're not hearing this for the first time, Dr. Pele. Has there really been an effective and transparent management strategy of IDPs?
I'm not a politician, and I am not a government spokesperson. My answer will simply be, that was then, this is now. Then you had a different leader. Now you have a completely different leader, So I think generally speaking, there's a light at the end of the tunnel that they say, like they say. I think some things are being done differently. Let me give you one instance. All of those policies of then that you just reeled out and intelligently presented, you know, none of them had any component of inclusivity. No, not one person with disability was taken into consideration. The current policy addressed holistically the issue of inclusivity. That's the difference. Then there were no advocates who were advocating for the most marginalized. Now there are advocates, several, who are now advocating for the most marginalized. So yes, a lot of funds, a lot of noise were made then. Let's give a chance for what is being done now. And Jumoke, I'm very particular about this because I am part of the process now.
All right.
So I can assure your viewers that just like, I don't know, it wasn't on your channel, but on another channel, I was with the Honorable Minister and I was talking about the good work that we had discussed and the things that he intended to do. And I said it openly to his face. I said, well, the same way I'm praising you now will be the same way I will come and talk about the things you didn't do if you're not willing to do those things.
Okay.
And just yesterday, I can tell you for free, he taxed, by the way, he has set up a committee, a special committee within the ministry that is comprising of persons with disability that are going to work with his ministry. So there's a high level of transparency and commitment. Now, don't forget that this current minister is a person with disability. He doesn't have a sense of smell, and he does not hide it. So there is a strategic direction that I believe will get us results that we never got before. For instance, let me remind you, Jumoke, I know you have time constraint.
No. We still have enough time. We just need to go on a break. But please round off with that.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I'll wait for you then.
All right then. Let's take a break, everyone. And kindly hold on, Dr. Pele. Let's take that break, and when we come back, we will continue this conversation. Please stay with us, everyone. Reintegration of IDPs, the challenges, the successes, and the way forward. And I've been speaking with Dr. J.K. Pele, Policy Development Analyst, CEO, MD, TAF Africa. Dr. Pele, let's continue with these challenges and other ending matters, which are, allegations of deliberate hunger, diversion, outright stealing of humanitarian aids of IDPs. Let me have your honest perspectives on that. And to what extent would you say this has contributed to the problem? Because in the past, former President Muhammadu Buhari had asked the acting IGP at that time, Ibrahim Idris, to arrest and make example of government officials accused of stealing food aid meant for displaced Nigerians. And just last year, we had survivors, victims, and de-radicalized women of the Boko Haram insurgency in Borno State who came together to demand justice and reparations for the atrocities they suffered in the states. These are some of the issues. So what mechanisms would you say are on ground or should be on ground to ensure these do not, raise their ugly heads again?
Well, I think, like I said, I'm trying to get my friend Tijani to join this conversation. There's a new sheriff in town. That's the only way I can put it. There's a new team who are running the institution. They tend to they are well equipped and quite prepared to do something different compared to what has been done before. I think we need to give them time If we give them enough time, they will be able to deliver on the expectations. But as much as there's in the past, we have been a bit, we've seen the pessimistic side of things. I think we should be more optimistic, this time around that we will get better results than we got before. And I'm saying that this uh, based on hindsight because I've seen the policy. It was properly interrogated. Uh, the engagement was robust. And some of the issues, like you have been mentioning on this program tonight, which is very well researched, okay.
Yeah.
Um, I believe that at the end of the day,
So,
we will
Dr.
begin to
Pele, this
see.
policy you're talking about, is that the national policy on internally displaced persons?
Yeah, well, there's a holistic policy on migration.
Okay.
There's a holistic policy of migration incorporating the internally displaced persons and all that. So yeah, there are also trickles of policies on internal. In fact, even my organization was trying to work with INEC to have a electoral policy that deals with internally displaced persons, and all that. So there are several kinds of response plans. Most of them are really not policy. They are just response plan and all that. But I think, again, the Honorable Minister for Humanitarian has set out a plan to harmonize these policies that sometimes have cross-cutting effects and most of them working at cross purposes. So at the end of the day, we will have a proper policy direction, proper policy brief, and proper policy implementation.
But do you also think we need to domesticate these policy?
Okay, so this is very important. Just like laws, we can't continue to use the excuse of domestication as a means by which we cannot implement policies. When a policy is national, it doesn't stop implementation at the subnational. The subnational goes into domestication simply because they have peculiar instances or issues or that they want to bring to bear. So they would then take the national policy and streamline some of the issues around issues at their local level, to enhance the national. So when you have a national policy, it does not stop. Domestication is not an excuse for implementation.
Dr. Pele, I'm sure a lot of persons would disagree with you because, yes, reviewing this policy is good, but has it served its purpose? And I'm asking that question based on two different reactions. First, Zamfara State Governor, Dr. Dada Dawa, was on my program last Wednesday, and part of the conversation we had was about the increasing number of displaced persons in Zamfara State. His administration is emphasizing the importance of domesticating the national policy on IDPs to safeguard the rights and welfare of displaced persons. So that was what I was asking, if we must begin to look in this direction so state governors can, sit up.
Well, if I get you absolutely right, in terms of government insisting, again, I'm telling you as a policy expert that domestication is not always an excuse for anyone not implementing a policy. I'll give you an instance. Same thing is applicable to law. For instance, You say, well, there's a national disability law, you know, and then one state will now tell you that because they have not domesticated that law, therefore they cannot go ahead and implement. That's not an excuse. That's a mere fallacy because the law is a federal law, and whatever, whichever state we, which happen to be part of the federation, will go ahead and implement that law. So, in most cases, policy frameworks are designed like that. You cannot say because it's not been domesticated in a particular subnational that a national policy cannot be implemented. You know, it's as good as saying that, well, um, Federal Ministry of Education should only exist in Abuja. And because it's federal, you cannot take directives of the minister and the ministry at the subnational. It doesn't work that way. I'm a member of the National Council on Education. So I know that state comes to the council to present their report, and the council will then urge, that's the term that they use, the state to go ahead and implement, you know. So the excuse of domestication is not it's nothing to write home about. It's not it's not a reason uh, for anyone not to implement a policy that have been formulated and approved at the national level.
Right. You know, I also asked because Yobe State Governor Mai Malabuni became the first governor to unveil a comprehensive and ambitious policy aimed at providing dignified, safe and voluntary solutions to internal displacement. That policy seeks to address fragmented and uncoordinated response to IDP issues. And Dr. Tijani was there, I think around last year, to embrace this idea. But then what is the place of technology in implementing some of these strategies and policies?
Technology has come to stay, and technology plays a very, very vital role uh, based on affordability, based on adaptability. You know, I'm choosing my words because it doesn't make sense to invest in policy in a technology that is not adaptable within our environment and within our location. You know, again, cost effectiveness of the technology is also very, very important. What can technology do? I mean, we are in the era of AI. It gives us fast information. Find gives us fast solution. You know, so we cannot, even governance cannot uh, thrive now without implementing the technological breakthrough that we have today. I mean, I am in Portugal and you are in Lagos with a device, um, laptop, you know, which was not there several years ago, you know, and Zoom. I'm able to come into your studio. You're able to take what I'm saying and put it out there, you know. So technology has come to stay. And anyone who is refusing to embrace technology will not go far at all. You know, I, it's very important that uh, I think the time has come for Ministry of Science and Technology to invest more in technological infrastructure, open up the space for more technological ideas, and especially these young people of Nigeria, you know, many of them are tech savvy. I mean, one can look at what is happening today. Everyone on the palm of your hand can determine what happens, send money, receive money, you know, send information, receive it process information with the speed of light, you know. So technology has come to stay, and most of the difficult areas of intervention can be solved through technological advancement.
But the issue of funding, let me take you up on structure, capacity, and funding. Do you think the commission, let's leave the ministry for now, do you think the commission is well funded?
I think I want to believe so, because, I mean, last week, I don't know, I think Tijani may be on standby. Ask your studio people to check, you know. They, throughout last week and week before, they were running around defending their budget at the National Assembly. I think this time around, they will be properly funded. I don't think they will be underfunded, taking into consideration how large their operations and the things that they are doing both in the country and outside the country. You know, I don't think money will be an object. However,
I asked that question because former Commissioner Iman Suleiman Ibrahim identified funding as one major challenge as far back as 2021. But another highlighted challenge is that, I mean, there are other bodies in the country like NEMA and SEMA performing the same function. And so it became difficult for returnees, especially those in camps, to know which officials are catering for them, given the overlapping IDP and returnees management. How critical is this?
I think sometimes, this is my personal opinion.
All right.
Most times, Jumoke, the problem here may not necessarily be not having money, but the capacity to manage money and to cut out waste. I think part of our problem in our country is not being able to manage what we have. It's not necessarily that we don't have. We have, but not being able to manage what we have. You know, oftentimes some of the funds in our hands are injected into the wrong, or most times very wrong intervention that has no bearing with the people that you want to reach. You know, so as much as I agree that oftentimes we struggle with funding, I also want to say that most times the people managing the funds, the fund managers, get themselves involved in wasteful spending. They buy what they don't need, and most times embark on trips that they waste resources, much needed resources. So as much as we want to blame the government that government is not giving us funding, we must also be prepared to manage whatever is given to you, and in capital, account for what you have received.
All right. Dr. Pele, before I let you go tonight, you know, what kind of cooperation or commitment do you think individuals and host communities must show to the Commission or the Ministry for the full implementation of some of these strategies?
I think what the Honorable Minister is doing right now is commendable, and that is, look, I'm not just going to believe that I have all that I want within the executive arm to implement what I want to implement. He's reaching out to the international community. He's reaching out to the private sector. He's reaching out to NGOs. That's the way to go. So the key word here is engagement.
All right.
You know, engage.
All right, Dr. Pele, thank you so much for joining us on Politics Tonight. Dr. J.K. Pele is a policy development analyst, CEO, MD, TAF Africa, and now a podcaster. Thank you so much for joining us for this very complex and very important conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jumoke. Thank you. Thank you for the good work you do.
Thank you very much for watching, everyone. It marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But you can watch the repeat broadcast of this episode at midnight. Get in touch with us on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and X at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Good night, everyone.